This is a scene from Donald Glover's surrealist dramedy Atlanta, in which a group of people outside of a club get hit by a man driving an invisible car. In context, it makes sense, and it's a payoff for a joke the episode builds to during its entire runtime. This is a scene from the Vince Staples show on Netflix, in which he gets jumped by a group of mascots in the back of a water park while waiting for an order of fried chicken. The Vince Staples show is a comedy loosely based on a rapper's life with splashes of surrealism. In context, the scene doesn't make sense and it kind of just happens. The lazy comparison would be that Vince Staples show is just a quickly thrown together ripoff of Atlanta, but it goes deeper than that in some ways. The Vince Staples show is closer to Curb Your Enthusiasm, the HBO series that's loosely based on real-life creator of Seinfeld, Larry David. But Netflix has already made the show. It's called Black AF, and it's loosely based around the real-life creator of Blackish, Kenya Barris. Love or hate the show in person, Kenya Barris, one thing we can say is it understood the show it wanted to make from episode 1. The Vince Staples show cannot say the same. As long as there's been successful movies and directors and creators, there have been knockoffs, be it from the studio trying to imitate the success for cheap or the creator themselves. After Quentin Tarantino's success with low-budget, witty characters, Hollywood gave us 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, Killing Zoe, The Big Hit, Get Shorty, all with meta commentary and trying to imitate that Quentin Tarantino style of dialogue.
You know the funniest thing though? It's the little differences.
Example.
Well, at McDonald's you can buy a Krusty Burger with cheese, right? But they don't call it a Krusty Burger with cheese.
Get out. Well, why do they call it?
A Quarter Pounder with cheese.
After the success of Family Guy, we got a whole genre of edgy adult animated shows that focused less on writing, jokes, and filled the runtime with as many swears and sexual references they could get away with. Even the cheap imitation style is referred to as a Family Guy clone. Think the trash Netflix and others make like Chicago Party and Mr. Bertram. But what exactly is the difference between inspiration and clone? Even though I think Family Guy is F-tier humor, I also haven't watched it since I was in high school, and will admit it's different enough from The Simpsons to exist on its own. Same with King of the Hill. It's close to season 1 through 3 of The Simpsons before The Simpsons went full wacky, yet it's clearly inspired from the satirical takes and borrowed enough while making its own style and feel. Which brings us to Donald Glover and the series Atlanta. It's not the first American surrealist piece of media, or if you're the type of black person that treats Spider-Verse 2 like it's Do the Right Thing and just discovered the term crash out in 2024, you would call it Afro-surrealism. I've been a fan of surrealism for a while. I watched every episode of the American version of Wilfred, Sorry to Bother You, and I'm a Virgo. And I was a fan of satire before I even knew what it was. The Simpsons is the only reason I know facts like the Fat Man and the Little Boy were nicknames of the nukes America dropped. So, I should have been the ideal audience for this show. Satire, parody, and surrealism are all like first cousins and my favorite type of comedy. I'm pretty much the only person on YouTube that did a deep dive on Jay-Z's satirical turned surrealism video for Moonlight that basically predicted the state of Hollywood remakes, and I could 100% see them making pointless remakes of white sitcoms with the black cast for a cash grab.
Hey. Hey, Mr. Tux. Why aren't you guys dressed?
We have a half hour.
No, 4 minutes ago you had a half hour. We have to be out the door at 20 to 8.
Relax, Ross.
Relax, Ross. We'll be ready. It only takes us 2 minutes to get dressed.
But rather, it's a show like I'm a Virgo that came after Atlanta or King of the Hill that came after The Simpsons, inspired or not. They truly understand the genre they are a part of and took inspiration from it. What about the Vince Staples show? So this isn't an attack on Vince Staples. Last time I made a video directly mentioning the rapper, he was in my comments talking crazy. That rapper was Lupe Fiasco in my video about Kendrick Lamar. But first off, let's be honest. This is a show on Netflix. It's a reason it's a joke how easy it is to get a show or movie on Netflix. They buy anything, almost all of their action movies look identical. They don't care about quality. They will cancel a show before it gets a chance to grow and only see first week streaming numbers as a sign of success. Also, the show is only 5 episodes long. What that tells me is it has a small budget, which includes the writer's room. And rewatching the show is very clear either there aren't experienced writers at Netflix or Netflix rushed this series. Speaking of budget, I kept wondering why the show felt so off on first viewing, and then it hit me. Vince isn't that good of an actor or an interesting enough plots for him to be the only main character in this show. Tropes exist for a reason. Rather, it's Animated Family, The Simpsons, King of the Hill, or Family Guy all have mom, dad, 2 kids to revolve the A and B story around. Look at a sitcom like Seinfeld, main characters and 3 supporting actors for a B story and other adventures. Always Sunny, 5 psychopaths and adventures which people believe to basically be a modern version of Seinfeld. The Vince Staples Show is just Vince and all but one episode. It's nothing but a story, which leads to scenes that feel like extended Instagram skits, flat jokes, and bad pacing. But this is not the goddamn Rotten Tomatoes channel. You didn't come for a weak ass review. What I want to talk about is how the Vince Staples Show completely misunderstands surrealism. Before I did a rewatch of this script, if someone said the Vince Staples Show is just a clone of Atlanta, I would have defended it. While it's far from the best comedy I've seen, having a rapper as a main actor and a black cast doesn't make something to clone. It's inspired by it best. That's a hard argument to make after a rewatch. And if you look up reviews for this show, a lot of them sound exactly like that clip from Black as Fuck where white critics are afraid to be honest about black media.
Is that it? Are we saying that this is what's happening? That the critics are white guys like you, and they're afraid to say anything because they think if they say something, it'll be like, we're speaking bad against a black movie. So they just say, it's great, it was amazing.
Yes, exactly.
That's a little bit what's happening.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
A couple of things could result from this video. Either it'll do really well and I might possibly burn any bridges, or I might hustle my way into a writer's room. Listen, crazier things have happened thanks to the internet. Shout out to Issa Rae and Quintina Brunson. Speaking of, I don't have rapper or Hollywood money. I'm only able to afford to make risky videos thanks to today's sponsor. This portion of the video is sponsored by Aura. You'll probably never have to worry about getting accused of copying the show, but something you should worry about are online hackers. The past 12 months we've heard about major data breaches, and Dell was hacked, 3.9 million people info was stolen. United Health confirmed 100 million users had their data stolen. But most alarming of all, just a few months ago, National Public Data announced that they suffered a major breach potentially impacting every American. The incident compromised over 2.9 billion records used for background checks, including critical personal information such as full names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, and most importantly, social security numbers. It has been confirmed that members of the hacker group have released the sensitive information online for free. Thankfully, I feel secure because I use Aura, today's sponsor. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points, like the dark web and public court records, to alert you about the potential identity theft. They also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance in case the worst happens. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to Aura.com/John Lewis for a 2-week trial. That will be enough time for Aura to see if your data has been exposed. I'm not one of those lazy ass channels that just recap a show beat by beat to pad out time. So if you want to watch the full episodes, I'm only going to be talking about similarities in how the Staples Show misses the point and it's really close to some episodes of Atlanta. And of course, the Vince Staples Show is on Netflix in the US and Atlanta is on Hulu in the US. I don't know about other countries, so support them if you can. First, I will give them the benefit of the doubt. Tropes exist. Black people and rappers get arrested all the time. So the first episode of the Vince Staples Show is about him getting arrested and going to holding in jail. The second episode of Atlanta, which as a writer, I'm going to say might as well be the first episode because the first 2 of the series are one long story. It's about Paperboy and Earn getting arrested. In case of the Vince Staples Show, we have a young, annoying guy who's a fan of Vince Staples' music. Vince plays himself the rapper in the show. The annoying guy is used for exposition about the jail. We find out another fellow gang member from a rival set plans to shank Vince once they get in general population after booking. Vince makes his call for bail on the payphone, and it's our first clue this show will be at least dipping its toe in surrealism. The weird cheering before Vince makes a phone call not being acknowledged.
Hello, and welcome to jail. You have 2 free calls.
Along with the old head in the cell giving him advice. While Atlanta, on the other hand, starts with Earn and Paperboy in jail, discussing how the police tried to coerce a confession out of them because they don't have a victim for an alleged shooting on Paperboy part. And Earn was brought in for half a blunt. Yes, half a blunt. If you think that's absurd, that's the point. Not only that, Paperboy is given bail first despite the more serious crime, and the clerk is no help whatsoever on Earn paperwork or being processed for release. On his way out, Paperboy also runs into an overenthusiastic fan, this time a cop, who is not only a fanboy for rappers, but proud to have arrested Gucci Mane a different time.
Well, you know you need to own up to what you did. Like, what did I do, man? There's no victim, nigga. Get the fuck out my face.
The cop tried to get me to snitch on you.
Word.
Yeah, he was like, we both know whose fault this is.
While all of this just begins to show the absurdity of American prison complex, we've only begun. We see in the Vince Staples show, while trying not to get stabbed, he's called in the back for a one-on-one conversation with cops. They aren't as much fans, just amused a gangster rapper is now nervous about another gang member he may have to squabble with.
Come here. Next time you have a show, think I get some tickets?
If you let me out of here.
This fucking guy. You should try doing some stand-up.
They use this time to tease him. They reference Tupac, a rapper who died 30 years ago, and try to get free tickets for his next concert. The main issue is Vince sleepwalks his way through most of these scenes, so even when the joke is set up, his dry delivery kills the scene and joke. And the show with only 5 episodes, I can't help but compare it to the other show that did everything much better. So back to Atlanta. Earn is sent to another section of the jail, and a scene that makes me laugh so hard every time I see it.
Hey. There's no sleeping here. Sit up.
But you have to sleep. Everybody has always slept.
If you want to sleep, you got to wait till you're processed and sent to your cell upstairs.
And in this episode, we also have an old head to deliver exposition. After telling us why he's in jail, we see how jail inmates are fed like dogs. And most importantly, how a mentally ill man is allowed to wander around for everyone's amusement until the cops beat him like a piñata. This man who's in jail every week because of course he is, this is America. We don't do anything for the homeless or mentally ill besides jail them. Vince is back in his cell eating a nasty ass sandwich he finds an Uno card. He's bailed out and goes home to his girlfriend like nothing happened, and the episode ends.
Boy, you up in here every week cutting up.
He's in here every week.
He was in here last time I got locked up. That nigga crazy.
While in the episode of Atlanta, Earn is bailed out by his baby mama, and a short discussion about how that won't be too traumatic for their 3-year-old daughter because she's so young she won't remember the night daddy was bailed out of jail. In just that one episode, you see how 2 similar shows tackle the very serious issue of the prison industrial complex and black men being jailed in America. One is just a couple light jokes in LA gang politics, while the other gives us laughs while showing the bureaucracy and routine of jailing people. The old head was arrested for public intoxication while drinking on the stoop and won't be able to bail out for a few days until he gets his check deposited, and a revolving door for the mentally ill, along with petty arrests like Earn for half a joint. That's just a coincidence, you could say. Countless sitcoms have had episodes where the characters are arrested, especially black ones. I can't hold that against a show. It's only so much you can do with that plot. So let's look at episode 2 of the Vince Staples show. It mostly revolves around Vince being the middleman between police outside and a hostage situation on the inside, in which he personally knows the gunman. The Atlanta episode, Alligator Man, revolves around Earn being the middleman between police on the outside and his uncle in the middle of a domestic dispute, armed with an alligator and his girlfriend. The episode already sounds funnier. The Vince Staples show spends about half the time with Vince being denied a business loan, meeting Rick Ross in a scene that feels like it only exists to promote the rapper's wine and chicken wing deal before the robbery at the bank begins, and Vince's conversation with the rappers who know him from the block. They really seem like an extended TikTok skit. Hey, but shout out to them boys at RDC World. I just feel like they could have done this entire scene a whole lot better.
Good, bro. How you living, dog?
I'm good, man. How your mom and everything?
Oh, she's straight, bro. A little arthritis, though. A little arthritis.
Man, that's unfortunate. You know what you should really do, though? Epsom salt bath.
Epsom salt bath. Hey, bro, that's a good idea. I'm going to tell her about that, bro.
Vince is tasked with carrying every scene and every plot through the entire show, so it starts to feel like bad improv. Vince makes cappuccino to show how casual of an event this is for him, and the robbers do their best to fill in time with casual conversations about escaping to Mexico and not trusting crypto for the ransom money. So far, this just feels like a normal episode of television parodying the heist film, which is the show's biggest problem. We'll get back to that later, but let's see how Atlanta handles it. Because of past events we already talked about, Paperboy is on house arrest. While getting a ride to his probation officer, Darius tells Earn the story of Florida Man, basically a racist boogeyman that commits all kinds of insane crimes, which in this show more than likely actually exists, as others know about this legend.
Florida Man bursts into ex's delivery room and fights new boyfriend as she's giving birth. Florida Man steals a car, goes to Checkers.
Because Paperboy can't leave the house, Earn is in charge of fixing the situation for their Uncle Willie, whose girlfriend claims to have been kidnapped before the police show up to the house and start doing police shit. Now this is part comedy, but also everything does have real consequences. The episode could have spent this entire time on this ridiculous situation of a man with a full-grown pet alligator in his home holding a woman hostage over a missing $50 bill. But it does something more. While it does use this for humor, like Uncle Willie being simply known as the Alligator Man by the entire neighborhood and threatening police with it if they come in.
And if they keep on trying to act like they're gonna come in here and get me, then I'll let that alligator loose and see what they do about that.
You don't have an alligator.
Yes, he do.
He do got alligator. That's the alligator man.
I'm sure it ain't lying to you.
This hostage situation is used to give us more information about the entire family. The family had a falling out when Paperboy was younger and in a rap group. Now half the uncles don't even speak. Earn also admits to being afraid Paperboy will leave him on his way up to become a successful rapper. The scene switches from comedy to somber family business back to comedy, all within a couple minutes. While the Film Staple Show sends Vince on a task to find a passcode for the vault to pay off the bank robbers, and we come across more proof the writers aren't exactly sure how to do surrealism, but still want to try. While all of this is going on, some magical Negro janitor is singing and sweeping floors. That leads Vince to getting the combination of the vault, but it's already been heist earlier in the day. I can't help but think these scenes would be better if Vince seemed like he cared to be making the show and has more energy. It gets really hard to not compare these shows to each other when so many of the episodes have similar themes. But every episode of the Vince Staples Show feels like it had 1/4 of the budget. An episode should be 10 minutes maximum long. This one ends with Vince and a bank manager being released and a not safe YouTube ending to the bank manager.
Hey, LG. You don't gotta do this right now. The bank getting robbed. You can probably just go home.
While the Atlanta episode wraps up with Uncle Willie assuming Earn that he's not a crazy person like Florida Man, then immediately releasing his alligator and escaping into the sunset. Again, they both deal with similar subjects in different ways. The main issue is the tone. While Atlanta plays more like a drama with a lot of comedy, so everything's not taken so seriously, and surrealism scenes like The Legend of the Florida Man seem in place for this show, the Vince Staples Show doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. It is an episodic series, but Vince sleepwalks through his lines like he's not interested in making the actual show. While part of his personality is not liking the whole celebrity part of being famous, honestly the show could have worked better if they leaned more into the Curb Your Enthusiasm tone of Vince not liking anyone or anything that celebrity brings. Which takes us to episode 3. Now, this isn't an episode by episode review, so it's not much to say about it besides the fact they basically abandoned the surrealist themes they established within the first 2 episodes. And he goes to a family cookout where now that he's successful as a rapper, everyone needs his favor. And it ends with his uncle being O.J. Simpson, I guess? It's a joke. It's such an internet peel joke that if you watch a show a year from now, you won't get that he was satirizing O.J. Simpson's daily Twitter blogs that he did in 2023.
Hey world, it's yours truly. I hope everyone out there has had an amazing day. I know I did. I'm here at the world famous Coliseum. Go Trojans!
But the thing is, this episode has a lot more going for itself because it's the only one that features a real B plot of his mother and aunt's drama. But the show is only 5 episodes long, so it feels really out of place, like a pilot that was then scrapped for a show with an entire different theme, and that theme being Atlanta inspired. So up until this point, it could be some plausible deniability that the show is an Atlanta clone, or if it's not. Then we get to episode 4. Now, when it comes to inspiration, one thing you have to understand is exactly what you're being inspired by. Like, it's pretty well known Always Sunny is basically a modern version of Seinfeld, both with truly awful characters, but cranked up to a notch.
Let me get 2 20-piece dinners with a title top. And do that come with the biscuits? You're right, bro. Yeah, at the biscuits. Fuck it.
Episode 4 of the Vince Staples Show is such a clear example of what not to do when trying to make a black comedy with surrealism. From the clearly copied from social media dialogue, like the black people can't be racist joke, which can 100% work, but it's in such a lazy attempt, and the way they just do it, it makes me cringe.
Black people can't be racist.
That part. Racism is a social construct backed by systematic oppression, and we simply do not have the power.
No, we don't.
Plus, he said you was looking at him with white gaze.
She do look a little ambiguous.
But again, the plot is eerily similar to that of the series finale of Atlanta. Both plots revolve around the main character really wanting some fried chicken, a simple concept used to take these stories to insanely ridiculous levels. And I'm just a cop a plea again because I legitimately want the show to improve and work out. It has 2 of my favorite creators' fingerprints, that being Kenya Barris and Donald Glover, who according to interviews at least both gave advice. But I don't know any other way how to describe this episode than a bad spec script for the episode of Atlanta. It starts off with Vince, his nephew, his girlfriend, and her 2 brothers at some bootleg ass water park. And it might as well be a completely different show because Vince is written like he's from a completely different series now. He's an asshole to the other kids, reminding them they aren't related to him, and intentionally only feeds his nephew because he doesn't like the other children. Now, I'm completely fine with jerk characters. In fact, one of the best written of all time is Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But we've just watched 3 episodes of Vince in jail, a bank robbery, and a family reunion where he's not as much of a jerk to actual adults. This is another episode. It feels like the writers had no idea what show they wanted to make. They did throw in some aggressive mascots that don't really make sense for the plot besides a joke that still comes out of nowhere later. But to set up the plot, Vince is sent off to go get some fried chicken that's supposedly really good, except the guy at the register tells him they out of dark and white meat while holding secret chicken for one of his fellow homies.
Wait, is that chicken?
Hey, cuz, we ain't got no chicken for you. That back there, that's my deep fryer. That mean it's my chicken. And that is my nigga. Nigga?
Yeah, okay.
Not to be that person, but so many scenes in the show are like a less funny version of something we've seen in Atlanta. Like the episode Earn only has enough money to buy a kid's meal and the lady tells him that's not allowed.
I don't see no kids.
Yeah, I don't have a kid with me. I'm gonna eat it.
Well, only a kid can order a kid's meal.
That's not true. I know that's not true.
Oh yeah, it is. Only a kid can order it.
But let's just focus on the fried chicken episode of Atlanta. So Paperboy really wants one of those fried chicken sandwiches everyone lost their mind over a couple years ago from Popeyes. But the guys have to go support some black-owned sushi restaurant Van has guilted them into. If you black, you've been guilted into supporting some janky shit in the name of doing it for the culture. While doing all of this, Darius heads off on his own mini adventure to take a dive into a sensory deprivation tank. Yes, like that one Simpsons episode. Both of these plots set up for the insanity that will come, and it feels natural. like the black sushi spot is inside of a bankrupt Blockbuster across the street from Popeyes. While the Vince Staples Show handles it differently, after being denied by the OG behind the register, a park worker reveals to him about a secret fried chicken spot behind some red door. And it's all just handled so sleepily. He orders a chicken, told they'll call him when it's ready, and the scene that's weird enough if handled well. While waiting, Vince wanders into a room that he's the only person in attendance for a magic show. He's then cornered and jumped by a group of mascots. All of these things feel like the show trying to be weird because it doesn't understand what surrealism is and just thinks it's random scenes of weirdness. To his credit, this episode does have a B plot about his girlfriend and the kids stealing from the gift shop, but it really doesn't add anything and none of the jokes land. After getting jumped by the mascots, Vince returns hours later when it's nighttime now with the group's fried chicken, and the episode ends with the argument between him and this old lady.
Miss you, man. How's mom?
While Atlanta has a joke every couple of minutes and somehow ties in touching scenes of Darius' dead brother during one of his sensory deprivation dreams, Atlanta handles the very real subject of supporting black business with the paradox of some of these folks don't need to be running a business. Like the guy has cut up beach towels, hot white Hennessy instead of tea, and to top it off with that, what we call senseless nigga babble about black people not wanting to support him and his room temperature sushi and poison puff fish because they want to eat Popeye's chicken.
The night Queen and Slim premiered, we were filled. Line out the door. Black people hopped up on nationalism, coming to support their own. 15 minutes later, we were empty. Not one person ate the blowfish.
Through this entire episode of Atlanta, the writers also confuse us of what scenes with Darius are real and which are dreams, on some Inception type shit. The only way he's able to tell if he's in a dream or not is by cutting on the TV, and if he sees thick Judge Judy, he knows he's dreaming.
No, it doesn't matter which body part you use, but the idea is Judge Judy's always on TV, right? So if I see her and she's thick, I know I'm in the tank.
So when the episode ends with the sushi owner holding the crew hostage, getting punched in the face by Darius, and the crew driving off in a pink Maserati celebrating with Popeye's chicken sandwiches, it all makes sense with everything we've already seen. Oh, and this is the series finale of the show. Was the entire weird show with invisible cars and Florida Man all a dream? Well, we never see thick Judge Judy or regular Judge Judy to know or not. Now, other short episode order. This is easily the episode that feels like a bad knockoff of Atlanta, but in the worst way possible. Have a random scene of mascots fighting and magic shows aren't why people enjoy Atlanta. The reason the Vince Staples Show doesn't work for me is because it doesn't have any world building or character building. Each episode just feels like things happen to Vince with no rhyme or reason, and its character completely changes depending on what situation and scenarios the writers want to put him in. At this point, you're probably thinking, wow, it's no way the 5th episode is also an almost identical plot to an episode of Atlanta. And about 1/3 of you are saying, nigga, shut up and get to it. Clearly the 5th episode is an almost identical plot to an episode of Atlanta. Episode 5 is titled White Boy, in which someone from Vince's childhood wants to shoot him and chases him around Long Beach. Atlanta's season 4 episode, The Crank That Killer, Paperboy is being haunted by someone who's haunting any Atlanta rapper that uploaded a Crank That dance video in the late aughts and chases him around an Atlanta mall. How we get to these points shows why Atlanta is in a league of its own. The Vince Staples Show spends about the first third of the episode showing him in his childhood home with his mother and father before his father ends up in prison. None of this has anything to do with the plot. I assume it was just put there to fill in the required runtime for the episode. It's a pretty well-known clip of the South Park creators talking about how they avoid the and then writing. Instead, focus on XYZ happens because.
But we can take these beats, which are basically the beats of your outline, and if the words "and then" belong between those beats, you're f***ed, basically. You got something pretty boring. What should happen between every beat that you've written down is either the word "therefore" or "but," right? So what I'm saying is that you come up with an idea and it's like, okay, this happens, right? And then this happens. No. It should be this happens, and therefore this happens. But this happens, therefore this happens.
We didn't see Vince speaking to some middle school kids for career day, but he's not famous enough or make the type of rap they listen to, or so they don't even know like who he is. A student then tells him that his father went to school with Vince and they used to call him White Boy. Then in the parking lot, Vince makes eye contact with the child's dad. A Kill Bill siren goes off and he begins shooting and chasing Vince around the city. They try and add elements of humor with the dad stopping to get his son fast food, but it all just really feels like the first draft of an episode script. Like any writers I have, if it's video essays, if it's literature, poems, whatever, you know how your first draft, it just always doesn't work? That's what this episode really feels like. How does Atlanta use the same concept for an entire episode? Well, first off, it starts with the guys in the kitchen talking about regular shit. You know, some Nikes, Darius, and Earn Want, and rumors from the Shade Room and Lipstick Alley about the Crank That Killer, who's hunting down rappers that uploaded a Crank That video back in the day. But we all know how hood rumors go. This might not even be true. Just to be safe, Paperboy tries to get his old Crank That Jimmy Neutron video removed from YouTube and go about his day. Because this isn't exactly enough to fill an entire episode, we get the B-plot of Darius and Earn trying to get some rare Nikes off a creepy old man with some demands I'm going to let you watch the episode to find out about because it really doesn't important to this video.
I heard the killer got like white glasses like Fabo. He come in, he like, he got a knife. You all right, man?
So back in Long Beach, Vince is chased around town. He runs in the house of some random old white man who gives him a gun. He's chased into a flea market, and it turns out Vince used to make fun of the guy or something, and he never got over it. Eventually, Vince gets a drop on him, and that's the end of the episode. While Atlanta does so much more, they're actually able to make a plot about a rapper serial killer. This episode is so dense with jokes, it's almost unfair to compare the two. We have the trash-ass rapper trying to record with Paperboy, the aspiring rapper getting tossed through the glass, the girl at the pretzel store instantly recognizing Paperboy, half the mall getting involved in a shootout, and on top of that, Earn and Darius' sneaker side mission.
Hey, can I ask you something? How you know it was me?
The only famous people trying to blend in come in dressed like that. You're the only nigga in here with a hat with no logo on it. You know how hard it is to find a hat without a logo on it?
At the end of it all, we find out it wasn't even a Crank That Killer chasing Paperboy through the mall. The police caught him. It ended up being an old classmate that Paperboy had beef with that the guy never got over. Sounds familiar? So as we enter an era of more and more reboots, remakes, and sequels, smaller writer rooms and shows with original concepts get less and less time to build an audience, I'm willing to give the Vince Staples Show a second chance with this next season. Hopefully it's more inspired by and not a bad inspiration of Atlanta. Or it could end up being one of the many streaming shows most people don't remember. But as we enter this second reign of the Trump era in America, when it comes to comedy, I believe political satire no longer works in America. Surrealism done well is going to be how we distract and entertain ourselves. But that's for the next video I'm working on called What the Boondocks Did to Satire. I've been John Lewis, and before you go, here's a few minutes from one of my favorite videos I've recently released. I'm out. What if I told you the most iconic photo in sports has a story even more iconic? Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston, and the results of that fight would eventually lead to the arrest of mobsters and gangsters, Sonny's suspicious death a couple years later, rumors of the fight being fixed, Senate committees, gangsters running the sport for decades, a law being made and named after Ali, Mike Tyson going broke, and Floyd Mayweather becoming one of the highest paid athletes of all time. I'm John Lewis, and this is the story of the fight that changed boxing forever. Chapter 1. Wise guys. Now, to truly understand how this one fight changed boxing forever, we have to go back 50 years before it. Now, I know the type of people that watch my videos. Chances are you a guy who really enjoys sports and gangster films. And to give proper credit, a lot of the research for this video is from a book called Boxing in a Mob and some other YouTube videos I'll be putting in the description. And with all of that out of the way, I'm sure most of you seen the Robert De Niro movie Casino. In the intro, they talk about this character, Sam Rothstein, who was such a good gambler, he could change the point spread with one bet. Now, that character is based on a real life gambler, Frank Rothstein. I'm sure he did have some influence, but today we're looking at Arnold Rothstein, who was born 30 years before him, and the actual influence for that character. Arnold Rothstein is known as the father of organized crime in America. He's an OG to such mob legends as Lucky Luciano, Myers Lansky, and Frank Costello. He groomed these men to make money and stay out of the way so cops are not chasing after them. He taught them how to dress, tip servers and valets, but most importantly, instead of having shootouts like the Prohibition days, form organizations that will become different crime families and have sit-downs to keep down the violence and control the black market drug game so you all eat and set a fair price so everyone's not undercutting each other. Arnold was a big gambler, and his number one rule was only bet on a sure thing. Now, that's something you're going to want to remember through this entire video. Back in the early 1900s, horse racing, baseball, and boxing were the biggest sports in America. Arnold was a big fan of horse racing and loved to gamble on it. Well, how do you bet on a sure thing when it involves multiple horses and jockeys? How do you fix a race and make it believable? I'm sure some of you saying, drug the horses, of course. He did that sometimes, but if he couldn't drug the horses, or he was worried that someone would be suspicious, I'm not a horse doctor, but it is ways to see if a horse is drugged apparently, he had another tactic called sponging. He would pay a jockey to stick small pieces of a sponge in a horse's nose, thus preventing it from taking in enough oxygen, affecting the outcome, and then discard the sponges after the race.